planning to start off the series with a bang today, and we hope to bring you a great session in partnership with our friends at SEAction, the State Energy Efficiency Action Network. We'll be looking at commercial building energy data access, and we'll start off with an introduction from SEAction to this issue and to the current barriers to data access. We'll then move over to look at how the tide is beginning to turn on this issue and get an overview of solutions across the country. Next, we'll drill down to speak with some folks who are involved in what we affectionately call the Philadelphia story, where a number of parties are coming together to make data access possible in the Philadelphia area. And finally, we have some fantastic new resources and initiatives to announce before we open up to your questions. We hope all of this can support you in creating similar success stories across the country. And that's the plan here. So let me move forward to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. Move to the next slide. First, Jim Gallagher, who is co-chair of the SEAction Existing Commercial Buildings Working Group and executive director of the New York State Smart Grid Consortium. Next, we have Tim Wagner, Deputy Director of the Energy Efficient Buildings Hub, the EEB Hub in Philadelphia. Tim is kindly standing in for our advertised presenter, Lori Ackman, who is also with the EEB Hub. Marla Thalheimer is Director of Sustainability at Liberty Property Trust, which is a real estate investment trust headquartered in Pennsylvania. Liberty Property Trust is also a member of the Better Buildings Alliance, and Marla serves on the steering committee for the Alliance's Green Leasing and Tenant Engagement Market Solutions team. Tom Bonner is Manager for Issues Management and Public Policy with PECO, a Philadelphia area utility. And last but not least, Darren Gill is Deputy Director in the Bureau of Technical Services for the Pennsylvania Public Utilities Commission. We have a big lineup for you today. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jim Gallagher to tell us a bit about the issue of building energy data access and SEAction's work in this area. Jim?
Okay, thank you very much, Holly. And again, this is Jim Gallagher. I'm with the New York State Smart Grid Consortium. But I should mention my first exposure to these issues came in the 20 years I spent at the New York Public Service Commission, where I was on the staff for the Public Service Commission. Most recently, I've been co-chair of the Existing Commercial Buildings Group for SEAction, and I will explain that a little bit as we go on. But let me begin by telling you first a little bit about SEAction and what it is. It's a state and local energy efficiency action network. And this is a state and local effort that's facilitated and managed overall by the federal government, and in particular Department of Energy and EPA. And the idea of the SEAction is that it should build on the National Energy Plan, the National Action Plan, I'm sorry, for energy efficiency, with the idea being that the nation collectively would achieve all cost-effective energy efficiency by 2020. So it's a very aggressive target, but as much as possible, the focus and the objectives are to try to achieve this aggressive goal through a combination of market forces and then also state and local actions and policies. SEAction is an effort to build on much of the work that started with the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, the stimulus monies, and the idea is that through SEAction and other initiatives of its type, we would move beyond that one-time stimulus type of incentive to more sustainable policies and programs that help not only save energy and money, but also in the long term create jobs. So SEAction, its aim overall is to assist state and local governments in I would say 3 primary areas. Number one is advancing energy efficiency policies and programs. Second is removing barriers and disincentives to realizing energy savings. And then lastly is to do what we can to stimulate and develop state and local level investments in cost-effective energy efficiency. The next slide, please. A little bit about C Action itself, and in particular the leadership. C Action consists of an executive group and with 8 policy and program working groups that you can see on your slide. The executive group is comprised of more than 30 stakeholders, and many of them serve on one or more of the working groups identified on the chart. And the executive group helps oversee all the activities of each group and ensures that they're working in a coordinated way. The working groups represent areas of the economy and infrastructure that can help us achieve energy efficiency, and then each one of these working groups has a chair and co-chairs and is supported by staff people from DOE and EPA. And the groups are made up of state, local, national leaders around the country who are involved in various energy efficiency related issues. And the groups, and I'll just mention what they are. It's the Customer Information and Behavior Working Group. It's looking at data issues associated with energy efficiency and taking customer feedback and helping to refine those programs. It includes evaluation, measurement, verification working group, looking at M&V, measurement and verification issues, and recommending policies to the states. There's an existing commercial buildings working group, which I co-chair, along with Eric Kaufman from Maryland. There's an industrial energy efficiency and combined heat and power working group, a building energy codes working group, a financial solutions working group, and then the last two, a residential retrofit working group and what is referred to as a utility motivation and energy efficiency working group. So you can see these various working groups are made up of perhaps 20 to 30 individuals each, developing individual products. They're identified on the C Action working group pages. And each one of these working groups has developed both short-term and long-term goals and individual blueprints that will chart the course for trying to achieve their individual targets. And you can see all of this information on the C Action webpage, which I'll identify a little bit later. Each working group is now in its 3rd year of implementation and working with state and local governments and related stakeholders in various aspects of rolling out these programs. The next slide. Before I get into a little bit of detail here, I just want to say a little bit of something about the existing commercial buildings working group, which is the working group that we're really focusing on today. And the idea behind this existing commercial buildings working group is that we would engage with stakeholders to put together resources that decision makers can make effective choices about energy efficiency policies and investments that affect commercial buildings. And in particular, we're working on putting together model policies and guidance that would advance the notion of whole building energy efficiency policies. Not just individual pieces of energy efficiency within a building, but we're really focusing on whole building options. We also have, through the efforts of the working group and the C Action Network, we put together a steering committee made up of members of various working groups, and we published a document called the Utility Regulators Guide to Data Access for Commercial Buildings, Energy Performance Benchmarking. And this guide in particular offers guidance to regulators and also others involved in the trades on designing data access policies that are really important for managing building energy performance through benchmarking. And this guide in particular was created through what I'll refer to as a consensus-based process with input from more than 60 stakeholders. So it's a very useful guide that does a number of things, including it explains the value of commercial building energy performance and how it can drive energy and cost savings. It identifies the key barriers and challenges related to energy data access. It establishes how regulators can take a more active role, what they can do to facilitate customer data access solutions. And lastly, it clarifies some key decision points for regulators to think about when reviewing various utility data access solutions. The next slide. So why create this guide? And it's really because building owners want to benchmark their buildings, but for a number of different reasons. And while benchmarking helps building owners understand their energy cost and how energy is used, more and more policymakers across the country, as I'm sure most listeners to this webinar are aware of, are beginning to adopt requirements for building energy performance benchmarking. And that's happened so far in Boston, San Francisco, New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Minneapolis, Seattle, DC, and maybe even soon Chicago. And utilities and other building stakeholders, and for example, the EPA, DOE, and BOMA, Building Owners Managers Association, have adopted benchmarking programs and challenges. But in order to benchmark buildings and to make this whole thing work, customers need easy access and reliable ways to get at whole building energy data in a usable format from their utility. But there have been some challenges and some barriers to that. The next slide, please. Some of these barriers, I mean, currently barriers exist to getting this data in a number of jurisdictions around the country. Customers are finding that they cannot consistently get access to the data because utilities often face information technology, legal, or capacity barriers to getting that information to customers. And not all utilities are well equipped to respond to these requests from their customers, but many utilities around the country have had great success. And so what we did in developing this document was work with within the various jurisdictions that have been learning and working through this process to try to identify solutions that are practical and appear to be successful. Other problems include the fact that data collection and reporting systems often don't talk to one another, not only within the company, within a utility company, but between utility company and customers. So we had to find a way to facilitate that type of information transfer. You have the problem of multiple meters covering one building, or in some cases one meter covering multiple properties, putting many building owners and utility customers at a disadvantage in terms of getting the data they need to benchmark a single building. In many cases, utilities don't have clarity on the customer privacy and disclosure rules, and that has been a very major and important issue in jurisdictions around the country, that an issue that needs to be addressed by regulators. In fact, in multi-tenant buildings, consent's often required for every customer or every tenant in the building before the utility will release the data. And also some private business customers feel that utility data would disclose protected information. On the other hand, some jurisdictions have no issue with privacy, but others do. So it's an incredible challenge to work through these various issues that regulators are facing, and also all the stakeholders are facing in delivering data to customers to make benchmarking programs work. The next slide.
Jen, this is Holly. We've had a request
Yes.
from the audience if you could speak up a little bit. I think a few folks are having difficulty hearing. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Is this a little bit better?
Sounds better to me.
The next. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Regulators can take a more active role, and regulators first initially need to acknowledge that utilities face capacity, legal, and other systematic issues associated with supplying energy data. And on the other hand, regulators need to understand that solutions are available for these issues, and that's what the C Action Working Group effort, at least with this product, was trying to address. The Regulators can also take a role in encouraging utilities to be consistent and proactive in developing solutions. And there can be a coordination among multiple utilities serving a jurisdiction. The goal would be ongoing rather than one-time, one-off solutions. Something that customers know that it would become routine and wouldn't involve a special process every time the benchmarking requirement came around, say it's on an annual basis. And also the utilities and regulators can help plan and budget for data access solutions as part of a long-term strategy. And regulators can help ensure that utilities achieve cost recovery on agreed upon approaches for facilitating data transfer. Next slide. And just a moment before we move on to the next speaker, but I just want to say that, a little something about where this is available. And this document is available now on the C-Action website with the website address located right there. And other C-Action resources at that same location will provide guidance, information, and framework for various policies related to benchmarking, including also audit and retro-commissioning model policies and other documents that the working group is putting together. They'll be made available to the public. What's next on the data access issue, at least for us? We want to continue doing case studies and updates on emerging best practices for providing access to utility data for benchmarking. And also DOE is sponsoring statistical research to inform utilities and regulators on the effectiveness of data aggregation and protecting customer privacy. So we really encourage you to engage in various energy efficiency initiatives through the C-Action network to let us know about them, and also to take advantage of the resources that we have available at this webpage address. And with that, I believe we will move into one of our case studies.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Audience, please note that we will be posting this presentation in an archived format up on the Better Buildings Challenge and Alliance websites. And all of the links to various resources that you'll be seeing today will be available through that archive and also through a follow-up email that we'll send out to you. So you can come back and enjoy this presentation again and again in the future. I'd now like to turn to Tim Wagner at the Energy Efficient Buildings Hub in Philadelphia to walk us through the current state of affairs for data access across the country and to help narrate the Philadelphia story with our panelists. So over to you, Tim.
Well, good afternoon. This is Tim Wagner with the Energy Efficient Buildings Hub. Also, I work for United Technologies Corporation, and I'm here as Deputy Director of the Energy Efficient Buildings Hub, and I want to send along a greeting from our Interim Director, Lori Actman, who was unable to be here this afternoon, so I'm filling in for her. I'm excited to talk about some of the momentum that's building across the country for data access and benchmarking policies. So let's go to the next slide. This slide shows the locations around the country that have enacted or are considering benchmarking and disclosure ordinances. There's a growing nationwide movement on this. Philadelphia was the 6th major city in the country to pass benchmarking and disclosure laws. That was last October. Since then, Minneapolis and Boston have also passed laws, and Chicago has a proposed law that's under consideration. The key to disclosure is transparencies, and that transparency informs consumers, and they can make choices, wise choices about their buildings. So this can drive demand for more efficient space and increased interest by building owners in understanding their performance of their buildings and taking actions to improve it. And I also want to comment that a number of these slides were generated by the Institute for Market Transformation, IMT, and part of their Utility Best Practices Guide that I'll be speaking to today. Okay, next slide, please. So to make benchmarking and disclosure useful, you need two things. You need data, and you need a way to report that data, a standard way to report the data. Data access, to make data access easy is important, and that really means that the utilities need to be engaged. And engaging them early is, we found here in Philadelphia, was a very wise thing to do and made the process much easier. When the utilities can provide the historical information that's required for owners to submit their information under the disclosure ordinance, and then they need a way to do that in a standardized format, and Portfolio Manager provides that capability. So you can see from here, from this map, that the locations that have implemented disclosure and benchmarking policies have worked with utilities in order to help that be an easier process. Next slide, please. In addition to just providing access, there are other things the utilities can provide that can make this process easier. They can provide aggregated whole building data, where the buildings have multiple tenants. It's difficult to report, to gather that information individually. The utilities, though, can do that and provide that, and in many locations they do just that. Also, to make the process easier, the utilities can provide an automated upload ability to Portfolio Manager. And this is something that was worked on here in Philadelphia, that was worked with, is in the process of being worked with PECO, so that information that capability will be available for building owners in time to report by the October deadline for their reporting of their benchmarking data. Okay, next slide, please. There are also, well, this slide talks about the aggregation account threshold. So if different cities have instituted different thresholds for aggregating data for buildings, and this is to protect privacy. You can see from this that there's a variety of solutions right now that have been adopted, and moving forward, based on experience, maybe those will become more uniform in the future. Okay, next slide, please. So the utilities also have benefits from these benchmarking and disclosure, these tools for benchmarking and disclosure. One is that the information that's provided offers a gateway for other energy efficiency programs based on the results that are provided in the data summary. Also, it provides a tool to target and maximize savings. So now it's possible to do the third bullet, data to analyze energy efficiency programs and validate the savings, so utilities can approach their customers and provide more, have conversations with them as the owners are more informed about the energy use in their buildings. And finally, it improves customer service because the utilities are providing to the customer data that the customers are obligated to disclose. Next slide, please. So one of the questions is, well, benchmarking and disclosure in and of itself does not save energy. That's true, but looking at data from California, from the Public Utilities Commission in California, there's indication that benchmarking and disclosure does have a positive impact. And those results here from April of 2012 show that of the participants who benchmarked, 62% took energy management actions, 84% planned or implemented energy efficiency improvements, and 81% linked the improvements to the utility efficiency programs. So there is an awareness to benchmarking and disclosure that leads to action on the part of the building owners. Next slide, please. There's also data from a portfolio manager that indicates that benchmarked buildings, buildings that have been benchmarking consistently for a few years, have had reduced energy use. And this data from EPA shows a 7% energy savings over 4 years from 2008 to 2011 for benchmarked buildings. And with that, a 6-point increase in the Energy Star score. So again, the impact of benchmarking and disclosure is measurable in these limited cases, and through the work that's being done here in Philadelphia and other places, more data will be available in the next year or two to further illuminate the results of benchmarking and disclosure. Okay, next slide, please. So the momentum is building. As I mentioned at the beginning, Philadelphia was the 6th city to pass benchmarking and disclosure ordinance. 2 more have followed, and Chicago is under consideration. So there is definitely growing interest in this. There are other things you can see on this slide from regulators working to provide better access to data, to the guide to data access for benchmarking, DOE's voluntary code of conduct, different public utilities commissions considering how to aggregate data. And as I said, that is obviously an open topic with multiple solutions being worked in different areas. So that's a question that's being answered as we progress. And more utilities are funding efforts through their energy efficiency portfolios. So there's a national trend here that things are moving in the direction of benchmarking and disclosure, and that there are results from those efforts that are leading to energy savings in buildings. And the Energy Efficient Buildings Hub has been working with the Department of Energy and others to be a part of that, to be a part of the data disclosure and data analysis, and we look forward to doing more of that with the City of Philadelphia buildings moving forward. So with that, I'd like to transition into the next section, which is really going from talking about benchmarking and disclosure in general to specifically about the Philadelphia story. And we have a few stakeholders with us today who were partners for what happened in Philadelphia, and will be sharing the portions of the case study here today to tell about how this was done, what the important steps were, and how this was accomplished in Philadelphia. So I'm going to provide the introduction, and then I don't know, Holly, if you want me to introduce or if you're going to introduce the other speakers, or how you would like to proceed. But let me start with the introduction, and then we'll go from there.
And then you can head right on in to Liberty Property Trust, Tim. That's great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So next slide, please. So the ordinance that is in effect in Philadelphia requires commercial building owners, 50,000 square feet or over, to disclose their building energy and water use on an annual basis. And the method for reporting that is the EPA Portfolio Manager tool. The owner is also required to report building characteristics and usage. There is a template in Portfolio Manager for reporting that information that is we're working together with DOE and EPA to develop that, and make that available to building owners so that they can report all the information, including their energy and water usage. Sellers are also required to provide a statement of building energy performance to buyers and lessees. The electronic data transfer from a utility or third-party provider is allowed, and hence the engagement with PECO to enable the automatic upload of data to Portfolio Manager. And the initial deadline for compliance is October 31st, but the ordinance was effective immediately when it was passed last year. And so in this case study, we have we're going to hear from a few people to talk in more detail about particular aspects of this. And the first person is Marla Thalheimer from Liberty Property Trust. Marla, are you on?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate it. So as Jim was mentioning earlier, building owners really do want to benchmark their buildings, and we are one of those building owners, just one of many. So I'm going to take just a couple minutes here to talk to you about the value of the energy data from the building owner's perspective. Just to give you just a little bit of background on who we are, we're a large office industrial REIT. We've got 80 million square feet in the U.S. and the UK. And we do have a key corporate strategy to be a leader in sustainability and high-performance buildings. So we're very focused on our entire portfolio and really trying to make it as efficient as we can. Of course, energy savings or energy efficiency being the cornerstone of that program. We've done a lot of LEED buildings, but we're also very focused on Energy Star, and it's become one of our go-to tools in Portfolio Manager to really manage our assets well. We've labeled so far 110 buildings across the country, and our current average portfolio score is 75, and we're saved 21% in energy savings, which we're very proud of. That's about a $5 million in savings, in estimated savings for our tenants. And that's over our 2008 baseline. So we started benchmarking in 2008, and when we started, our average portfolio score was 55. So we were just barely above average, and we've been able to, over these last 5-6 years, move our portfolio, up into the Energy Star range, over 75, which has been very exciting. And at the time when we started, we had 6 Energy Star certified buildings, and those were really tenant-driven. So when we started benchmarking, we really, were new. It was new to us, but we knew that it would provide value. So we're very proud of that progress that we've made over our portfolio. So you can go ahead and move to the next slide. But the thing about it is that all of this success that I was just telling you about is in our managed portfolio. So what does that mean? That's where we pay the bills. So we pay the bills for a certain number of buildings, and we pass those costs back through to our tenants. And it's really important to us to keep our tenants' operating expenses low, which is one of the reasons why we're very motivated to make sure that our buildings are efficient. But out of the managed portfolio, for us, that's about 130 buildings, give or take. The tenant-controlled portfolio, based on the lease structure where they pay all of their own utility bills, and I don't have access to those, I have about 560 buildings remaining that I have no access to. So because of all the value that we've seen from benchmarking and how valuable tool Portfolio Manager has been to us in the managed portfolio, we thought, well, doesn't it make good sense to try to partner with our tenants who pay their own utility bills? That way we can provide a value-add service for them, help them save money and energy, and it helps us by helping us understand the efficiency of those assets. And again, I've got hundreds of buildings up there. I have no idea where they are on that Energy Star scale. I have no idea their level of efficiency. So we started down this road with this partnership program. We call it LEAP, the Liberty Energy Efficiency Partnership. And so, thinking that this is a win-win, right? The tenants are going to save money and we're going to get information. It's going to be great. So we've had some success. It's fairly new. We're about 1.5 years old now, and we've got 65 tenant partners. And we have been able to certify 12 of our warehouses so far, so we're very proud of that. And we are making some progress, which is good. So you can go ahead and move to the next slide. Our goal is, after obtaining written authorization from the tenant, of course, we're trying to get ongoing electronic access to their utility accounts. And, you know, I think when we first started thinking about this, we didn't realize what a tall order that was. But it just, you know, to us it didn't make sense in the year 2013 to have a tenant, you know, use resources to pull a bill and make a copy and fax it to us. Yes, it's hard to believe that people are still using fax machines, but it's true. I mean, that's still happening, you know, and so we thought, okay, there's got to be a way for us to get access. So we also partnered with a third-party solution to help us get electronic access. If they can get any sort of online access to that utility account, then they pull all the information from all across the country into a single dashboard, and we hit a button, and all the information goes to Portfolio Manager. So it sounds like a piece of cake, right? And we have, again, had some great successes. There's a few utilities across the country that did have, you know, the kind of infrastructure to make this easy. You know, we could set up one Liberty Property Trust utility account, and then, again, as tenants would give us authorization, their accounts would go under our account. So that works out beautifully for the ones that are able to do that. But there's also been, excuse me, a lot of challenges along the way, and we understand why. You know, again, we might have a tall order here of what we're asking, but and I think that what I've learned from, you know, participating in these conversations over the last, you know, many months is that, I mean, these conversations are new for utilities, and it's a wonderful thing that they're happening. But some of the challenges that we've been running across is just really not able to get that online access. We are actually, out of our partners today, we're currently manually entering the data for 42 of the partners. Yeah, you can see why this partnership is still somewhat limited. You know, we want to expand this, you know, across the entire portfolio, but it's really challenging. You know, I don't have the resources and, you know, anybody that quite frankly wants to sit and enter that data manually. So that's one of the challenges. And we've had some other areas, parts in the country where we can get online access, but only if the tenant shares with us their login and password. And that's a little uncomfortable. So, you know, that's not working out so well. And so we've also, where we can't get online access, we've tried adding Liberty to the account so that we get copies of the bills. So at least, okay, if we're going to enter them manually, we don't have to bother the tenant. We'll get the copies directly. And then that was the worst of all, because we actually had some utility accounts be changed into our name, out of the tenant's name. And that did not make the property manager very happy. So, you know, in those types of scenarios, we're trying to help the tenant and provide this service, and we actually caused them a lot of problems and headaches. So that was not a good scenario. So all of that to say, you know, there's a lot of inconsistencies, and just like, you know, again, Jim was talking about earlier, a lot of inconsistencies, but, you know, it is good that the conversations are happening. And the beautiful thing about the Philadelphia story, you know, the hub really acted as the convener, and they brought all the right people into the room and started the conversations and brought building owners and the utilities and the PUC, and just brought everybody into the room to have the conversation about the importance of this data. And of course, you know, our good friends at PECO rose to the challenge, and you know, I like to tell everybody that, like, they're like my dream come true when it comes to this project, because they're not only, I mean, of course they are in it to help the city. You know, they want the city to, I don't want me to be speaking for you, Tom, but they want the, you know, they really rose to the challenge to help the city with the mandatory benchmarking to really make it, you know, the process doable for the building owners, which is, you know, so deeply appreciated. But in addition, because, you know, they're not limiting it just to, you know, the city of Philadelphia. Their service territory is quite large here in the region. So just by having this data availability to be uploaded directly into Portfolio Manager, like for me here in this region up in Philadelphia, that adds 100 extra buildings that I can potentially partner with now and make it simple for the tenants. All I need is their signature. So it's a great story about what PECO is doing up here. So not only are they, you know, helping a solution for the mandatory benchmarking, but also, like for us, helping us meet our corporate energy goals. And I know there's other building owners around here that are equally as appreciative as I am of their efforts in this manner to simplify this process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Bonner from PECO, so he can tell you in more detail about their perspective and how they came to this and the solution that they're going to provide to us.
Thank you very much, Marla. And Marla is very kind in her comments. And I would echo her use of the word friend. We have been working with Liberty for about 3.5 years now on a separate project as part of our Smart Grid initiative. And in terms of being a corporate partner and a friend, we could not have a better one. So I want to thank her for everything that we have learned from Liberty over the last 3.5 years in terms of building efficiency, particularly in the commercial and industrial sectors. So thank you very much. PECO was engaged by city policymakers, City of Philadelphia policymakers on this issue in late 2011 as part of our Smart Grid Investment Grant implementation. One of the things we were looking at is how to use or how to take the enhanced access to data that we would be able to provide and the enhanced level of data that we'd be able to provide and use that to help our commercial and industrial customers save energy and money. So this really became integrated with two separate major initiatives at PECO, one that Smart Grid Investment Grant project and the installation of automated metering infrastructure in the PECO territory. And the second, in Pennsylvania, we have a requirement called Act 129, which requires all utilities in the state to meet specific requirements in terms of reducing customer energy consumption. So we looked at the desire of the city and our building owners and managers and some of our commercial customers like Liberty to find some way to get easier access to their usage data in electronic format than we were able to provide currently. One point I always like to emphasize is all customers do currently have the ability to get their usage data electronically from PECO through an online account. However, we recognize for a customer such as Liberty Property Trust or such as the City of Philadelphia, in Liberty's case where they have over 100 buildings, in the city's case where they have somewhere in the range of 1,000 buildings, that management of that data on a month-by-month basis for that many facilities is challenging. So we looked at what we could do to help. When the legislation started to be developed in the Philadelphia City Council, we did work directly with the hub and with the City of Philadelphia, with Mayor Nutter's office, with Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds-Brown's office, to ensure a couple things. Number one, that we would have adequate time to implement an automated solution properly. So that required us to have a timeline that allowed us to evaluate vendors, to look at what was the best solution to paying for the service or to financing the cost of implementing the service, to fit this in with many other IT initiatives underway at the company because of those other two major initiatives on Smart Grid and our Act 129 energy efficiency program, and ultimately to work with our regulators to see if there was a way to ensure simple cost recovery for providing this service. We had one other issue that we did want to make sure was covered, and that was that we all had an adequate time and forum to look at the privacy issue, which is one of our foremost concerns when we are asked to release customer data to a third party. As I mentioned, PECO is making a number of efforts to make data more accessible to customers. We adopted the green button standard. I believe that was March of 2012. We committed to that. I would be remiss on my colleagues' behalf if I didn't point out we believe there are two excellent federal platforms or standards out there. One is the green button standardized data format, and the second is the Portfolio Manager EPA website. We really encourage our friends in the government agencies to work toward a seamless integration of those two platforms. One of the things that we're finding with the recent upgrade of Portfolio Manager is some of the third-party tools that can be used to allow this automated data entry are not quite fitting in as well as others, and there's still work to be done. And we commend EPA for really accelerating this effort and doing everything they can to resolve the issues that are still out there. We do think that if we could get to one standardized portal in the future, that would really be the next leap beyond in improving utility benchmarking. So, what we did is we engaged with our Public Utility Commission through the collaborative that was led by the Energy Efficient Buildings Hub, and we got a clear signal from our Utility Commission that benchmarking and automated data transfer, or as we're now calling it, energy usage data tool, was something they wanted to see move forward and wanted to see piloted here in Pennsylvania. So with that, we included funding for implementing this tool as part of our most recent energy efficiency mandate program. One thing that is, I don't want to say unfortunate, I think is the appropriate place for the PUC in our state to be at this time. We don't actually get any credit toward compliance with our requirements by implementing this tool and providing it. It is something that even when we looked at the data that was out there in the field, we did not think was robust enough to justify requesting credit toward our compliance obligations. But we hope through several years of research, both in this market and around the country, that we can get to a place in the future where we get some credit toward these mandates by providing this service. And again, no criticism whatsoever of our Public Utility Commission there. That was a decision of PECO that we didn't feel the data supported it at this time, although we do hope ultimately it will. The next step for us is to work with the City of Philadelphia, the EPUB, and others to coordinate on public communications and outreach. We have a number of steps underway. We have already linked a PECO website for our commercial and industrial customers with the City of Philadelphia's landing page for partners, where they can help direct customers to us to get details on how to use the energy usage data tool, and we can direct customers who have questions about the law and its implementation back to the city. And I think that ensures the customers get the best information and the easiest path to finding it. Another thing we've done working with the city is we've consulted on the development of a standardized tenant authorization form that they can provide to any building owner that is looking for their tenants to provide the sign-off for PECO to release their data to the building owner. Kind of a one-stop shop form that can be posted on the city's website as well as our own. It has already been legally cleared for privacy purposes that it meets all of our requirements. And we're developing business processes to support that and can ensure the continued privacy of our customers' data. The tool will be, as Marla mentioned, available to all the commercial and industrial customers throughout the service territory. The requirement only applies in the City of Philadelphia, but this is a service that all of our commercial and industrial customers are going to be paying for through our Act 129 program. Therefore, we wanted to make sure it is available to all of them, and ultimately hope to, as was mentioned in one of the earlier presentations, use this as a portal toward the other energy efficiency programs that PECO offers. We are dealing with a couple issues, as I mentioned earlier. There are still some final integration tweaks between the upgraded portfolio manager tool and the third-party data transfer service that we're working with. And I know EPA is working night and day to get final resolution on that, and I commend them again for their efforts. We also have an internal PECO issue where, just to give you an idea of some of the complexities of this, we have buildings in the City of Philadelphia that have had accounts for 70, 80 years with PECO. And they were entered into our system with certain customer addresses that, sometimes for marketing purposes, the address has changed in everyone's mind except the PECO account. So something that may be in our system as 1701 Arch Street might now be, for the building owner and operator and everyone else, considered 16 Penn Square. And some of those issues, when you really get down to the nitty-gritty, they require a lot of integration work to get beyond. So a customer who is well-meaning and trying to meet the city's requirement doesn't run into a roadblock over something that happened 70 years ago when the original account name was created for that building. So little things like that sometimes take time to resolve, and I would encourage everyone who's working on this around the country to be aware that challenges can be that granular that you have to deal with. So we do anticipate getting all of these issues resolved. September is our time frame now. We've been telling folks, the goal is third quarter of 2013. We fully expect to meet that requirement, and that will give all of our customers and the constituents in the city who are subject to the mandate about a month in advance to get their data downloaded, to establish an account, get their data downloaded, and then move forward with the benchmarking process. And once those accounts are created, once the authorizations are received, I've called it a set it and forget it mechanism, and no one likes that. In terms of getting the account established, it is set it and forget it. We hope that no one, once they set it, will forget about their opportunities for implementing energy efficiency programs. The only thing I will say is we are limited by an authorization form that has to be updated every year, so we're putting in place procedures to ensure that we communicate that information to our customers as well. That's all I have. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Darren Gill with the Pennsylvania PUC that's played a really essential role in expressing their support for the PECO program and the all-important factor for us of ensuring that we would be able to recover the cost of implementing the program.
Thank you, Tom. This is Darren Gill. I am the Act 129 Program Manager for our Energy Efficiency Program in Pennsylvania. As Tom mentioned, Act 129 is a state legislative mandated energy efficiency program. Today I'm standing in for Chairman Powelson, who I know Chairman Powelson would love to have been on this webcast himself. He's been very involved and supportive of the EEB Hub and especially the benchmarking initiative we're talking about today. The perspective from the PUC is that we don't really consider the benchmarking initiative as a standalone initiative. As Tom talked about, we have hoped that our utilities, and PECO did integrate this in with our Act 129 energy efficiency mandate. The Act 129 mandate does require a TRC test to determine cost effectiveness. So when we implement programs such as this, they are required to pass a cost effectiveness test. So with that in mind, we looked at these programs, the benchmarking on the commercial side, very similar to what we have on the residential side in many ways too, such as an O-Power type of thing. When we look at the benchmarking programs, from the Act 129 savings perspective, we do believe there's two savings perspectives. There's the first savings comes from perhaps the building manager or the owner of the building or the customer of the building just taking some actions. And I believe Tom talked at this point, PECO hasn't requested any of that kind of credit. Now, the second type we look at as a commission is the savings due to additional measures installed. Perhaps the building owner looks at their usage and installs a new air conditioning system or some other type of definitive measure using some of their Act 129 money, some of the money that PECO may be used to incent these measures. Now, what was nice about coming here later in the presentation is that I can really build on a lot of the folks before me. Jim Gallagher's presentation, particularly his slide number 9, he listed 4 points of opportunities for regulators to take an active role. And those are things that at the Pennsylvania PUC we are all engaged in right now. Some of the things of those 4 we have solutions for, and some we're still working through. Just to quickly run through those, one of the issues were on that slide 9, Jim mentioned some systemic issues. Right now we have varying meter capabilities in Pennsylvania to get the data out to customers. Luckily, PECO, a little bit of luck and a little bit of hard work, PECO does have more of an advanced metering system and is able to get some of this data out. Some of our utilities may not be able to. One of the second of the 4 points, we talked about developing consistent solutions, whether we go green button or portfolio manager or some blending or use of both. That's something we have to look at in the commission as statewide. We adopt something at PECO, it may become the standard for the entire state. The third issue, of course, has been mentioned as the clarification of privacy and disclosure rules. It's a real large concern that we have not at this point really taken up in detail is how tenant privacy would be handled in terms of aggregation. You noticed on one of the slides there is no threshold in Pennsylvania. It's not something we've taken up for aggregation yet, but I would imagine we will be doing so. And the fourth point talked about cost recovery mechanisms. Because we do have an Act 129 mandated program in Pennsylvania, the cost recovery mechanisms for benchmarking are well established here in Pennsylvania. And as Tom mentioned, PECO is taking advantage of those cost recovery mechanisms as part of Act 129. The third line I have on my slide talks about how they value these energy efficiency reductions in terms of going forth. What we would ultimately like to do, as Tom mentioned, is we think there are savings associated with just customer activities, not just additional measures. But much like the O-Power and other residential behavioral programs, there hasn't been a lot of study and research to validate the savings, either initial savings from a building manager taking different actions, or even persistence. Once this data is up for 2, 3, 4 years, what is the persistence of building owners continually going back to the site and adding more and more measures? The depth of measures that they wouldn't have installed had benchmarking not been in existence. So those are the things that we're looking at. I think a couple things that in Pennsylvania we have solutions to, and a couple things that we're working through with EEB Hub and the other stakeholders. So Tim, that is my slide. I'll pass it to you.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the PUC and its chair, and working together with PECO and with others, including real estate companies, and has been the work of the EEB Hub, and really the role of the convener. So if we can go to the next slide. Can you hear me?
Hey Tim, your screen might be frozen up, but we've got it up.
Okay, thanks. The hub has served as a technical advisor to the city and led the engagement with stakeholders to help coordinate what was necessary for benchmarking and disclosure to move forward. And I think one of the key roles that we were able to play was to highlight the importance of convening all of these people, and as I think it was Marla said earlier, bringing them together where they could talk about the challenges and talk about the issues and lay out a path forward. And so that was the role we played. Again, we want to express appreciation to all those people that participated from the mayor's office on down to help that take place. Also to others like the Institute for Market Transformation also played a key role. But that convening effort is not just something that's unique to us. That's something that can be applied across the country. And so I want to give you an idea of the milestones in our process and then talk about how that can be applied elsewhere. So if you go to the next slide, the hub convened 3 meetings for utilities and content experts over 2012 and one into 2013 to work with PECO, the utility, and to have presentations from a lot of the interested parties, a lot of the experts from across the country, to bring all the information together so that it could be presented and discussed in July of 2012, and then in October, bringing together other cities. It's important to engage utilities from other cities to get perspectives and challenges and lessons learned from other places, as well as what was going on here in Philadelphia. And then in February, to have a best practices report based on what was learned and how it was coordinated with IMT. And that's available. Okay, go to the next slide, please. And out of that, the key outcomes are that PECO is developing these web services you heard about. The EEB Hub is a recognized convener of utility-related issues in the region, and the PUC is relying on the hub for education strategy and engagement. We are hosting monthly workshops here in the Philadelphia region to disseminate information about benchmarking and disclosure. We've had one. We're having a second one tomorrow. And those are over a period of several months to get the information out into and make it available to everyone. And these lessons, as I said, can be scaled nationally. It's really about the convening. It's about engaging the stakeholders, engaging the PUC and the utilities early in the process. That was one of the lessons learned. We from the EEB Hub are working in conjunction with DOE and other partners to support other efforts like this across the country. Holly, I think you have some additional resources to talk about.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to the whole Philadelphia Story team for telling us how it's done. I'd like to follow on to introduce two new, brand new resources that we have available that are related to the story that you've just heard. So next slide. First of all, if you have been frantically taking down notes as our Philadelphia folks were talking, you can put down your pens because the Better Buildings Alliance Market Solutions team in collaboration with the EEB Hub and Liberty Property Trust have put together a case study that outlines the process that you've just heard about in Philadelphia and how they went about working on data access in that city, in that region. You can access that case study at the address that you see on the bottom of the slide on the right-hand side. I'm sorry, on the left-hand side, and that will be available probably in the next couple of days on our website. We'll follow along also with links in an email to all of these resources, as I mentioned. Next, we have a great resource from one of our Better Buildings Challenge partners, Prologis. As a part of their Better Buildings Challenge commitment, partners share their non-technical and replicable solutions to barriers to energy efficiency in their organizations in the form of these online case studies called implementation models. So Prologis's implementation model outlines the strategies they are employing to access energy use data in their triple net leased facilities across the country. Prologis's strategies include some of the same things that you've heard today from our Philadelphia folks, energy data clauses in leases to gain access and authorization straight through the lease, authorization forms that are provided to tenants either at move-in or move-out, which give access to tenant energy use data, and then also work directly with utilities that provide third-party access to energy data as PECO is working to do. So you can access this implementation model, which is downloadable as a PDF and is really meant to serve as a primer to anyone who's interested and looking to replicate the solutions that Prologis has put in place. And I know this implementation model also includes lease language that you can cut and paste and put right into leases that you may be employing. Next slide, please. So this slide also provides some additional resources and links to those resources. So first, of course, is the Regulator's Guide to Data Access that Jim spoke to at the beginning of this webinar. Secondly, is a resource from the Regulatory Assistance Project, or RAP. RAP is a nonprofit team of experts focused on long-term economic and environmental sustainability of the power and natural gas sectors. And the paper that is referenced here explores what jurisdictions across the country are doing right now regarding implementation of various statutes and rules and benchmarking requirements around building energy data. So kind of an overview of what's happening out there. Next is the Utilities Guide to Data Access, which was developed as a joint effort also between the EEB Hub and IMT, the Institute for Market Transformation. So this is a similar resource to the C Action Guide, but it's really focused with an audience of utilities rather than regulators. Next is a great resource, OpenEI Utility Data Access Map. So we had some questions coming in about, what utilities are providing what kinds of services right now. And this is an excellent place to go and look in your region. This is an online map that displays which utilities are providing their customers access to their own energy data in consumer-friendly and computer-friendly formats. So you can go on and see exactly what is available in your area or for the buildings that you own or manage. Next up is a resource from DATA, which is the Data Access and Transparency Alliance. This organization was mentioned earlier by Tim and is a collaborative effort organized by the Institute for Market Transformation, the Building Owners and Managers Association, or BOMA, as well as the Real Estate Roundtable and the U.S. Green Building Council around access issues for building operators. So just a great website to check out on these issues. And finally, the Green Button Initiative, which has been mentioned several times this afternoon, which is helping utility customers, both residential and commercial, to get access to their own energy consumption data by providing a standard format for that data. So far, 35 utilities across the country have committed to provide energy consumption data in the Green Button format. And this has inspired a number of companies that provide energy products and services to also develop their products using that format so that you can, for example, upload your data and figure out what size of solar panel you might want to buy for your business, or conduct a virtual energy audit and potentially benchmark your building, all using the standard data format. So now I'd like to turn it over quickly to Monisha Shah of the National Renewable Energy Lab to announce an exciting new project on the data access front that is coming from the Better Buildings Challenge this fall. Monisha.
Thanks, Holly. Well, we heard such a great example today of how all the relevant parties in the City of Philadelphia work together to provide building owners access to their energy data for benchmarking. And if you're interested in being able to do the same thing in your own community, well, please tune in. As Holly mentioned, I'm Monisha Shah, and I'm helping the Department of Energy to stand up a new effort called the Better Buildings Energy Data Accelerator. The Energy Data Accelerator is one of 3 other accelerators which were announced in the President's Climate Action Plan at the end of June. The 2 others are focused on energy savings, performance contracts, and strategic energy management for industrial sites. And the accelerators are meant to address very specific market barriers that building owners might be facing with respect to deploying energy efficiency. So the Energy Data Accelerator is focused on all of the same issues that we discussed in this webinar today. And in this accelerator, utilities and local governments can partner together with the Department of Energy to help building owners in their jurisdictions get access to whole building data for benchmarking purposes. So in the accelerator, DOE hopes to bring together this cohort of cities and utilities to demonstrate that there are low-cost, standardized technical solutions for providing whole building data. We also hope to develop best practice approaches for reliable and secure utility aggregation of energy data from multiple accounts while still protecting the privacy of individual tenants in those buildings. And then we're also interested in demonstrating new tools to streamline the transfer of utility bill data to benchmarking tools such as Energy Star's Portfolio Manager, especially leveraging standard data formats such as Green Button. So DOE would also provide national recognition to the cities and utilities that sign up for the accelerator for leading the charge on providing their building owners whole building data access. And so to that end, we're hoping to officially launch this program this fall with the White House, and we would love to have your involvement in the Energy Data Accelerator. So if you are grappling with some of the same issues that were discussed in today's webinar, please get in touch. We would love to try to help you with those efforts. And my contact information will be included with the webinar slides. So thanks for the opportunity to talk about this accelerator, and we hope you get involved.
Thanks, Monisha. We look forward to hearing more about the Data Accelerator in the weeks and months to come. And please do look for Monisha's contact information as the last slide of this presentation. So now I'd like to open the session up to questions from our panelists. I see we have quite a queue of questions from folks already lined up. So I'll start with a question for Tom or Darren about what other utilities such as PGW, Water Department, and smaller utilities such as the Steam Loop, what are other Philly utilities doing about data access?
Darren, do you want to start off? I can give PECO's perspective after that.
Yeah, this is Darren Gill from the PUC. From my perspective, right now, since, as Tom mentioned, this is kind of a pilot with PECO, we haven't really reached out in any way to any of our other electric utilities in the state or any other utilities, gas, water, of any kind of region in the Philadelphia region. But it's definitely something we could look into and probably will look into. But at this point, we're focused on getting this pilot up and running.
Yeah, and echoing what Darren said, we at PECO have had a lot of implementation challenges to make sure that we can have the service up and running by the time the city's requirement goes mandatory. One thing we have tried to do is, from the business side, knowing what our privacy requirements are, assist the city in developing a customer authorization form that we will not only recognize, but we would be hopeful that our colleagues would recognize, and if they need some tweaks, they would not have to be starting from scratch to get authorization from from tenants to building owners for transfer of data. So that's one of our tasks. We do like to caution folks that there are some challenges in some of the kind of idealized solutions we've heard about one integrated utility portfolio where we all mutually authorize our data to be sent as an ideal solution for the customer really creates privacy challenges that go beyond anything that we have been able to get our arms around at this point. We think it really does have to be a matter of the customer working with each of its respective utilities to get the data. We all have different computer customer information systems. We all probably will have different third-party tools or customizations of the tools that are out there to transfer the data, and it's just one of those things that's nowhere near as simple as it may sound at first. So that is just one caution we like to put out there when folks ask about potential utility platform sharing.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that real quick, this is Marla from Liberty. I will tell you also that like PGW is and the Water Department, and because of the benchmarking law, they're really doing the best with the sort of the scenario they have. I mean, the Water Department really doesn't have the infrastructure to do anything automated at this time, but yet they're making sure that they can cooperate and get the building owners the data, in the most efficient way that they can with their existing infrastructure. PGW is doing the same, but they're also, PECO's been a great leader for the region, so they're kind of, looking and watching, what PECO's doing and looking into sort of what might make sense for them down the road. So, yes, I mean, the good news is everybody's a part of the conversation, they're just not quite as far along as what PECO is.
Great. Marla, I'm going to direct the next question to you as well, which is, have you analyzed ROI on making wise energy efficiency choices across the portfolio, and how does benchmarking assist you in prioritizing these projects?
Yeah, okay, so how the benchmarking process in general, I mean, we really use portfolio manager as an asset management tool. And how we do that is, so it helps you prioritize your capital expenditures, right? So if you've got a portfolio of buildings, you've got limited capital and you have to invest. So when the capital's sort of allocated, like our property managers, they know that, if they're going to put something in for their capital budget of, that energy, like an RTU or something needs replaced or some sort of energy efficiency item, they put in their property managers, their portfolio manager score. It becomes a part of the evaluation. So we use the tool to try to help say, we think that this much savings and this much savings could drive our score to this, and currently our score is this, and it sort of helps build the business case for, getting the approval of those CapEx dollars. So really using the tool to be able to help us prioritize. I mean, that's honestly the progress that I was telling you about that we made in our portfolio and that managed portfolio was really a lot of low, no-cost stuff. A lot of lighting retrofits because lots of good incentives to take advantage of out there, particularly with lighting. But incentives, low cost stuff, and smart capital planning. So again, if you're going to spend the capital anyway, you spend it smarter. All of that on top of using the portfolio managed tool was what really, really helped us save energy. And again, we still have work to do. We're not done, but that's our general policy. You got to get the low stuff. So as far as ROI, I mean, it's really a little bit of a no-brainer on the low, with so much low and no-cost items. Gets a little tougher for the larger capital items. Again, that's why we have a spending smart capital policy to not replace like for like, but replace like for better, and always try to get the most efficient you can for the price point. And as far as overall ROI, I mean, we're not necessarily seeing higher rents on every single one of these Energy Star buildings, but we did an evaluation of our portfolio where our occupancy rates are higher in our LEED and our Energy Star buildings. So for us, that really sort of equates to real dollars, so it really speaks to the value of benchmarking.
Great. Tom, I'm going to send a question your way. You mentioned that you worked funding for web-based data tools into your smart grid investment program. Could you expand on the linkage between the smart grid and data access?
A couple things. Number one, through our DOE Smart Grid Investment Grant, we funded the initial analysis and planning for the implementation of automated data transfer or energy usage data tool, and the DOE was supportive of us working and making a slight modification to our plan to include that funding. We're having a broader initiative to include the web presentment of customer data that will allow, previously a customer could view their data solely on a month-by-month basis, and we didn't have the tools in place to provide weather normalization of that data or comparisons to previous months or the same month in the previous year. All of those capabilities are being provided to our customers. That capability went live in April of this year, and as each customer gets a automated meter infrastructure AMI meter, that account is created for them at PECO. So we're really improving the granularity and I don't know if actionability is a real word, but the data we're giving our customers, we're trying to make much more easily understandable and accessible to them, and then drive them to our various energy efficiency portals to allow them to act on that information.
Okay, and a follow-on question to that from the audience about whether or not the energy usage data tool and associated components, specifically the authorization protocol, might be available to utility jurisdictions throughout the country.
What I think is going to be the result here is we provided an authorization, a draft form. We commented, marked up some information provided to us by the City of Philadelphia, and said, your form, you'd need to modify it this way to meet our requirements. for releasing that data. And my understanding from talking to our friends and colleagues with the city is they're going to be producing a final form and posting it on their website that reflects those requirements. I cannot guarantee that for every utility and every state and other jurisdiction that that particular form would meet their local requirements. I do think if folks looked at it, they would have a very good starting point, both for what the form has to say, as well as, we believe strongly that the most effective way to do this is have an annual authorization that, at the November, December of next year, we inform every customer who's signed up and authorized the data transfer that you need to re-up this year. And we think on both our side and the customer side, that's going to be a much more efficient way of making sure that those authorizations are always up to date. So what I would suggest is folks go to the City of Philadelphia's website when the final version of that authorization form is posted. And that's phillybuildingbenchmarking.com, if I'm getting that correct. And somebody from the EPUB can correct me if I got that wrong.
Okay. And so as a follow-on to that, you mentioned the authorization form perhaps not being specific enough or meeting the needs of other jurisdictions. I wondered if our panelists might address more broadly what aspects of the action that you all took together in Philadelphia are specific to Philadelphia. We like to look at this as a replicable example of what can happen across the country. Are there aspects of what happened that you feel are specific and perhaps not able to be replicated elsewhere?
Holly, I just want to jump in on one thing. I think what's important, while the specific words on the specific form may have to be tailored for each specific jurisdiction, that the idea of the governing body that has put forward the mandate working with the utilities to develop language that both sides are comfortable with in terms of an authorization, and that can be jointly disseminated out to the regulated entities, is something that is replicable. So I just want to be clear on that.
Okay. Any other responses from panelists on aspects of the work that you all did together that might be very specific to Philadelphia and not so replicable elsewhere?
We'll say one.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, real quick, this is Marla, and Tom, you may want to speak to this a little further, but one of the things that seems to be a little bit unique to Philadelphia is, and speaking of the authorization, and that's the method that makes the most sense for Philadelphia, and it's totally replicable. It's not that it's not replicable, which is one of the interesting things I think about Philadelphia that's a little bit different than like Chicago and some of the other cities that have done this, is that the issue of the whole building aggregated data is less of an issue in Philadelphia, because really, we don't have the same type of meter setup like a lot of the other larger cities do. So I don't know, Tom, if that's something you want to speak a little bit about, because that was, I know, the one thing that was a little bit unique for us.
Yeah, and Marla's exactly correct. When we talk to our friends in Chicago at ComEd, which is also an Exelon company, it is very common in Chicago. It's actually the norm for large buildings to be sub-metered with dozens of individual tenants within one building, and that's the norm for the high-rise buildings in the city of Chicago. That is a very rare situation here in Philadelphia. As we were evaluating what we would do in terms of providing a energy usage data tool, we only found a couple, at most a couple hundred customers in our entire service territory that had sub-metered buildings, and most of those were in suburban strip mall type commercial developments, as opposed to a center city high-rise, which are almost exclusively individually metered here at PECO. That does go to the kind of the where's the value proposition, in investing the money in automated data transfer tools. For us, again, the value proposition was those customers who had, in some cases, hundreds of buildings that they wanted to benchmark. And in talking with people like Liberty and people like the City of Philadelphia, understanding the logistical challenge they faced versus the comparative ease of setting up the energy usage data tool.
Okay, thanks everybody. This may be our last question. We're drawing near the end here, but I wanted to put one more question into the hopper. What are your views on the prospects for utilities to get energy savings credit for implementing data access solutions and supporting benchmarking? And this is open to the panel, whoever can jump in there. Nobody wants to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, and this doesn't apply just to building benchmarking, it's a larger relationship that we have in Pennsylvania between our government, our regulators, our utilities, and a lot of engaged customers where in many areas we are kind of pulling the rope in the same direction, and there's been a long history of collaboration and working toward implementing these types of programs rather than adversarial relationships when a new initiative comes up. And I think it's that both the structures and habits of collaboration across the different affected sectors that's the most valuable thing anyone else from outside of Pennsylvania can learn about the Philadelphia example.
Thanks, everyone. I think we're going to have to wrap it up with the question and answer portion. We're nearing the end of our webinar time. So I just want to thank our presenters very sincerely on behalf of the Better Buildings Initiative and also our friends at C-Action for participating in the webinar today and providing your insights on this important topic. We thank our audience as well for joining us, and we hope it was a useful discussion. We hope you will come back for our September session on Tuesday, September 3rd from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll be looking at tying energy efficiency to compensation and performance reviews with presentations from 3 Better Buildings Challenge partners, Alcoa, HEI Hotels, and TIAA Cref Financial Services, all of whom have programs in place to connect their energy efficiency achievements to employees' compensation or performance reviews. Next slide, please. And so this is our last slide. We'll conclude with contact information for all of our presenters and support team today. So please feel free to contact our panelists for more information about their data access efforts or any of us at DOE who are supporting the effort. Thank you so much for joining, everyone.